Welcome to the Love That For Us podcast.
Come hang out with us as we explore a holistic approach to entrepreneurship, wellness, and navigating relationships in adulthood.
We'll be getting vulnerable about life and dishing the business expertise we've learned along the way, interviewing industry professionals,
All while you get your weekly dose of girl talk and heart-to-hearts. We're your hosts, Carissa Emiko,
and Ashtyn Brooke.
and this is the Love That For Us podcast.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You're fidgeting.
You know?
You're like doing this, like you're just like moving things like that don't need to be moved. Just like little inches.
No, totally.
I'm like, why is she fidgeting? How do you feel about today's episode?
Well, I am in probably the best headspace that I've been in about fertility in a very long time. So that's probably why I'm able to record this and like dive in.
Yeah.
Because if I wasn't feeling good, there's just no, I wouldn't be like sobbing through the whole thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I feel confident. And in the other sense, like I just don't think I've ever told this story so in depth and like chronologically and peeled back so many layers before. So I do just need to like tell myself like it's okay to cry, like it's okay to be in a really good headspace about it and also like relive like some of the really hard things about it. And it's really vulnerable. It's also really personal. So I think there's a big part of me that hopes that people who hear this and maybe are in the same season like can decipher like what's personal to me and what's not personal to them, and know like it's okay where there's differences. It's normal where there's differences. And I'm just sharing out of my experience. And like I don't usually say like my truth very often because I feel like it's so overused, but I am really just sharing like what's true for me. So I kind of wanted to disclaim that too. Like there are things that I don't want to be projected onto someone else that just doesn't resonate with them. And I hope that people can, I guess, kind of make those distinctions for themselves and hearing my story and like maybe living a different experience, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I feel like, not that you need my permission, but I want to give permission for you to not feel like you have to preface like every single experience with that, because
I tend to do that.
you just did for our podcast. So it's like that applies to the whole podcast, right? Like it's like you're just sharing your experience, and you're allowed to do that without being afraid of hurting somebody else's feelings. Like it's your experience, it's your story. And if somebody doesn't want to listen, they can stop listening, you know, like, so
so true. That's good.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I love you.
I love you too.
And I'm excited to dive in. And I think too, like hearing you and just knowing you're in a good place with how you're processing and your acceptance of your fertility journey right now. I think it's cool because I'm sure in seasons of your fertility journey where you haven't been in that place, or you've been in the low lows, you've been able to borrow hope and borrow, I'm already going to cry, borrow hope and borrow strength and confidence, and even just like information from people in their fertility journey who are in a more okay place. And I think it's just beautiful full circle wise that you get to be that for somebody now.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's so true. Definitely a real thing that you have to do when you're in the lowest valleys is like draw from other people and other messages and other truth. So I do hope that like reaches someone in that way who's listening, because there is strength in sharing your story, and there is strength in drawing from people's stories and letting other people's stories impact you and affect you in a positive way, because we all who have gone through this, we know the way other people's stories negatively affect us all the time. But there is a sense of really deep rooted community from people that you share this with that is unlike anything else I've ever experienced, because you join together, you bond together over a very, very hard struggle. And what happens when people share their story is someone else feels less alone and someone else feels less isolated. And that alone is such a necessary feeling to keep going in this. And so I do hope that that is something someone listening experiences, is like, I feel less alone. I feel like I can do this another month, and they can draw on my story in any way that resonates with them. So, do you want to ask me questions? Like, do you want me to just
Yeah.
start from the beginning?
Yeah.
So why don't you just take us back to the beginning? Like maybe when you first started to realize that it was taking time, like because I feel like people when people get pregnant, not everyone gets pregnant like their first month they try. So I feel like there is some normalcy in the beginning to like, okay, it's taking some time. So when was like the first time where you kind of were like, is this going to be an issue or is this going to be like a thing?
Well, I can't place what year it was, but I would say even within college years, like I had a very deep sense that I was going to struggle when I was ready to have kids. Like I just knew somewhere
Wow.
in my gut, like
Is
I
this
don't
like
think,
before you and Will were even married?
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I was just like, I don't think having kids is going to be easy for me. And I don't know why or where that came from. Um, but I, I mean, and I'm also going to share really openly about my body because that's so big in the storytelling of this. So, um, I'm going to share as I do, like just openly about how my body has worked and not worked, for fertility. So I've had very, very long irregular periods since the day I started my period. And I think that's probably the first inkling that
Yeah.
my inner instinct just knew, like, yeah, that doesn't seem to be like everyone else's, or it's not quite as normal as I think it should be. And I think that was a first indication. But, in 2019, I started to change my lifestyle to pay attention to more things like what I was putting in my home and putting on my body. And like I really started to switch to a more naturally minded lifestyle as far as products go. Um, and I remember like having my first 30-day cycle that year and being like, whoa, that's crazy. That's so abnormal for me. But that didn't really last. Um, so in 2020 was the year that Will and I were on the same page of like, I think we're ready to start. Like we're both ready to have kids and start that process. We didn't know what it was going to be like, but we felt really aligned that it was like far enough into our marriage. We're like, yeah, we feel ready for kids. And within probably 4 months of that decision, I reached out to get into a like naturopath, and that was my first like move as far as like making any medical choices and like getting help and having someone guide me in a natural way, because I
Was that like you were realizing this might take time and that was a step you took, or were you just like, I'm trying to have a baby, so I'm going to go start seeing a
no,
naturopath?
it was because I think I knew it was going to take time, and
Okay.
I wasn't having like regular cycles. So I would say the decision to get help like that happened pretty quick, which I'm grateful for. Um, didn't love my naturopath at all, which was a huge bummer. Um, so what happened with that doctor. She's like a fertility specialist, but it was really the first time I started getting tests done. And she would just like take my lab results and like throw supplements at me. And I didn't know any better and I didn't know any different other than to take these supplements that I couldn't even tell you today like what they really were.
Hmm.
But that doctor I worked with for about a year, and it was the first, unfortunately, like bad experience with feeling like they don't remember things about me. This doesn't
Hmm.
feel personal. She feels like a scattered doctor. And I stayed with that specialist too long, like feeling like, well, I'm already this far in. Like, I've spent so much money out of pocket that it's like you kind of start to ask yourself, like, do I want to waste all that or trust the process? Like, you're kind of always making these decisions that are thrown at you as you're like researching things online, working with, a professional that I think I trust, but I don't, my gut is starting to feel like frustrated every time I have another appointment with them.
Yeah.
And I really started to develop, looking back, that really developed a supplement anxiety within me that I didn't
Hmm.
have words for. But because I wasn't even seeing like changes, I just was like, dude, I'm spending so much money on these appointments, so much money on these supplements. She's not really seeing any changes in my body. And I feel like I'm locked into this routine that feels detrimental to the outcome. And
Hmm.
so I look back at 2020 and 2021 Ashtyn with a lot of compassion because I thought I want to approach this as naturally as possible for the first few years. Like, I want to give my body a fighting chance
Hmm.
before other modern medicine interventions, which I don't regret at all. Like, I feel really aligned with that decision still, but I have compassion for that girl who knew in her gut, like, I don't even like this doctor. I don't even feel excited about it.
Yeah.
I don't feel hope from it. She, by the year mark of working with her, like looked at my results. Like, I got my labs done again and she was like, why isn't this working for you? Like, I don't understand why your body's not responding. And I was like, you're telling me that? Like, you're asking me?
Ugh, that
I'm
the way that makes my blood boil. Like,
it was so discouraging. And to spend so much money, I know like the money is like you can't overlook what you spend in your fertility process because it can suck you dry.
hmm.
But you're like, this is truly the most important investment I'm making. Like, this is the investment of my future baby, like the start of our family. So that was a really, really disheartening comment. And honestly, I think that was the same appointment she kind of fired me. Like, as a patient, she was like, at this point, I'm not really sure how to help you, which was just mind blowing. I'm like, you're in this field as a specialist and you don't
Yeah,
know what to do next. And all we've
dude.
approached is supplements. Like, looking back, it's crazy. However, what I pulled from that experience was a quicker trust in my intuition of who I'm working with.
Yeah.
Because fast forwarding a little bit to when we moved to Michigan, I had one appointment with the only fertility clinic in like all of Grand Rapids. And I was one and done with that appointment. I was like, I'm not sticking with this girl. Like, no offense to her. It just, my gut said no. And
Yeah.
I'm thankful that my experience with that negative doctor was like, gave me more confidence to trust my gut and like make faster decisions.
Yeah.
One of the really, really disheartening parts of infertility is the way time goes by
Hmm.
and how much time it takes to work with someone new and for them to give you a protocol that we want to work on. at the beginning they have, they have hope for you. And so you lean into that and you're like, okay, this could be the answer. And then 6 months goes by and you don't see change, or you're on a wait list for a new doctor and you finally get in and you're like, I just want a result right now. Like, I mean, it is one of the hardest things is to watch the clock just go, and you have to fight in your head to stay present. You have to fight in your heart to stay hopeful, and everything around you is still spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, and everyone around you is getting pregnant, and then they get pregnant again with their second baby, or they get pregnant with their third baby, and you are still trying to find the answer. It is like one of the things I talked a lot about in therapy was just the feeling of a timeline, feeling really behind. And for me in my life, nothing has made me come face to face with the idea of a timeline and a proper timeline for life than infertility and wanting to start a family and having this beautiful picture in your head. And then 3.5 years have gone by and it's like, this just wasn't in the plans at all. So to anyone who's in it, like, I just want you to know, like, I understand how long a month actually feels like in a timeline that you have your heart set on, and how devastating even 6 months going by can be as you watch someone else's belly get bigger in that span and you're still on a wait list. Like, it's crushing. So I'll back up to leaving that specialist. Around that time, I also started to do a lot more personal research in just like trusted sources on Instagram, to be honest. Like, I found accounts that I followed and trusted so much, and dove in a lot more to like nutrition. I started to make a lot more changes in my diet. Not in the sense of dieting, but in the sense of what am I supporting my fertility with that actually matters in the long run. I'll just give a little brief overview for what I did, and kind of what Will joined me in some of it was like we stopped eating seed oils or bringing seed oils into our home. I would say we have a 90% like cleared that out of our diet. As far as what we buy for our own groceries, I started focusing a lot on protein and animal-based protein, and eventually started to care a lot more about blood sugar regulation, which will play a big part into when I finally get my diagnosis, because I didn't have a diagnosis for 2 years, I think. And that's a really hard place to be when you're working with a specialist. And then I had another OB, and all this time's going by. And it wasn't until we moved to Michigan, and that one fertility appointment I had at the clinic like was my official diagnosis of PCOS. There's like such a bittersweet thing that happens when you get an official diagnosis of like, okay, I have an answer. Also, I have an answer. And like, there's all this attached to that.
Right.
My only understanding of PCOS as far as like genetics go is that my sister had PCOS. My mom never did. But my sister got pregnant twice without any help, support. And so that was actually in my head, like, I can do it. Like, I don't even know if I have PCOS, but if she could, I could, right? Like, we share the same DNA. So it wasn't until 2023, that I was diagnosed with PCOS. And it's so freaking common. But what I didn't know is like there's like 4 different types of PCOS. And so
Hmm.
what was frustrating for me was I didn't have all these symptoms that are often common in PCOS. Like people can
And
struggle with,
PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, right?
yes,
And
yes,
so is that what it sounds like? Like cysts on your ovaries?
yeah,
Like that's
a lot of cysts. Yeah, multiple
yeah.
cysts. And honestly, like from what I understand, having some cysts is actually really, really normal. And it's not something
Yeah,
to
I know
fear.
I've had cysts before, like my gynecologist
Yeah.
has said that. Yeah.
PCOS is like a lot more. And
Okay.
then that starts to impact so much more of your hormonal function. Um, but when you like Google what are symptoms of PCOS, like I didn't have a lot of those aligned with like my body and the way that my body was like showing signals of it, which I think is maybe why some of my doctors didn't super explore that. But like looking back, it's just like, ugh, I roll. They should
Yeah.
have. I told them, like, yeah, it runs in my family, technically my sister. But anyways, so I was, yeah, like I said, very torn on getting that diagnosis out of like it felt a little bit like 2 years have been wasted, which is not
Yeah.
true. I I learned so much about health in this
Yeah.
process. Like I said, like leaning into more of my diet. And one of the things that might resonate with someone listening is the amount of information that's available on the internet is crazy.
Seriously, I was going to ask that because you've talked about researching yourself multiple times. And I mean, I Google that I have a headache and I think I have cancer. So, like,
Right.
the amount of things that are, it's information overload.
Yeah.
And when it comes to anything with your health, anything in even the holistic world, everybody has an opinion and everybody has a different opinion. And they could be opposing and just as
Mm-hmm.
loud and just
Mm-hmm.
as expert like, and you're like, well, what the
Mm-hmm.
fuck do I do with that
Yeah.
information? And I can just imagine the information overwhelm that comes from
Yeah.
that when like you are in a situation where it could feel out of control. And I imagine like finding information or learning or trying a new this or that feels like you're getting a sense of control. And so, like, what
Yes.
has that been like for you to
Yeah.
to be exposed, not only just exposed to all that information, but like to want it, but then also I
Mm-hmm.
know to realize that like it could be actually more harmful to like your nervous system
Mm-hmm.
to be exposed to that
Mm-hmm.
information. Like, what has that been like for you?
Yes. I look back on the first like 2 years, and it was drinking from a fire hydrant of even from people that I still trust. I still like listen to their voice on the internet, and I respect it and believe it and follow a lot of their, recommendations for fertility support. But gosh, it's really, really hard to pace yourself in
Yeah.
information intake. And I do feel sad for those years for myself where I didn't know to slow down. I didn't know to pace myself, to give my nervous system a break, because especially when I started diving into the food stuff, well, then everything about food kind of became really anxiety ridden for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to enjoy my life without thinking about food and the way that everything I eat is going to be a direct indication of positive or negatively affecting my fertility. But
Hmm.
also feeling like, well, there's people out here who don't give a rip about what they eat. They're not active. They use toxic products and they're getting pregnant doing cocaine in a bathroom. Like
Yeah.
why, like that's just such a battle of like I don't understand why it's not working for me.
And also just this like messaging of like, it's not fair. Like, that's not
Yeah.
fair. And
No.
that sucks to just like have to see that around you. And I know from being your friend, and I have a couple of other friends on fertility journeys, just like the baby announcements and
Mm-hmm.
seeing that, or even like knowing somebody that like you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm healthier than that person.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I know I'm doing all these things better. Honestly, you could come
Yeah.
from a place like that. What do you do? I mean, you asked a question box on your social media
Mm.
of questions people had for you for this podcast. That was one of them, was like, how do you personally deal with constant announcements and even like ads for things on social media? Like, what has been your experience with that? And then what has been the way you've like protected yourself from feeling disheartened by those things?
Oof. It's a really tender part of this that's like living with a bruise on your heart all of the time. And out of nowhere, something pops up and swings at it and hits it. And you're like,
Hmm.
I didn't even see that coming today. Like, I was doing good.
Right. Because you're
Um,
just like scrolling, not,
yeah,
yeah, and
just
it
like
just comes up.
you're clueless. Like um, it is, constant and it is all around. Um, and I think for me, there are literal strangers on the internet who I've been offended by that they get pregnant. um, but pain demands to be felt.
Hmm.
And if you don't feel it, it will build up, it will bury itself in your body in some way. And
Hmm.
so, what I have learned to do is to feel that pain
Well,
because you might scroll away and try to forget it, but like, it still exists. You know, that person is now going to start sharing bump photos. You know, that person is, going to invite you to their gender reveal or their baby shower. And that's just one of many. Like when you're in
yeah.
your 20s and 30s, like it is the time of everyone having babies. So my advice to like what do you do with that is it's not fun, but feel what you feel and honor what you
Hmm.
feel because your your heart and your mind and your body deserve to let that grief cycle take its full course.
Hmm.
Um, and it will take its full course if you give it the time and honor it. Like you will move through that. It doesn't mean it's going to get any easier, but when I see a new announcement, I mean, I literally woke up to one today. I'm not even kidding. I was like, cool. I know we're doing this podcast, and here's another one. Yeah, I don't think for me, I obviously do so much work online, and so I haven't been able to um, completely get rid of social media.
Yeah.
If you don't do that type of work, I would absolutely take breaks and have zero shame muting people.
Hmm.
I have muted best friends of mine, and I have no shame about it. Actually, I have guilt about it, but I don't let that overtake my decision to do it, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
because it's what you have to do for your mental health. Like you have to do that.
Yeah. And I cry to Will about it. I have close friends that are in the journey with me that I lean on, and we send a screenshot and we'll be like, awesome, another one bites the
Hmm.
dust. Like, and you commiserate with people who are in it with you
Hmm.
because your heart needs to be seen. And
Yeah.
not even Will can give me that sometimes. Like, he
Yeah.
doesn't carry the weight of pregnancy announcements the same way I do. And so I cannot imagine not having people who share exactly what I feel to lean on. And it doesn't have to be a lot of people. It could be one person that you have a mutual understanding. Like, I got you. Like, when you see that thing, like, send it to me, tell me, and I will
Hmm.
be pissed off with you. I will hold anger with you. I will hold grief with you. And like, that can literally go on for years. It's gnarly. Like,
Wow.
there are people we've done that with each other for years now, which is super sad. Um, just when you think of how much time goes by. But yeah, I guess mute them, don't feel guilty, and really feel your grief, because pretending you're fine, it's not productive in your heart. It's not productive in your grief. And yeah, the online space is really tough. It's every day, people posting their babies at Christmas, people posting on Mother's Day. It's literally nonstop content of the life like you're hoping for. And being this deep in it now, I've never felt more confident in the boundaries that I want to personally set for myself,
Hmm.
with people really, really close to me, and with total strangers on the internet that I just feel envious of.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how I'd answer that question.
Speaking of the support that you felt by friends that are in this like similar journey to you, um, and I know this is a really sensitive subject, but like even the support or lack of support that you felt from friends that are not in the same season as you,
Yeah.
how have you navigated those relationships in your life with everything that you're going through and all of the emotional roller coaster that you're
Yeah.
having to ride, how have you navigated friendships and relationships amidst all of that?
We're gonna have an entire episode on this, so I probably will hit the tip of the iceberg, because this is such a layered
Yeah.
conversation. Like, it literally deserves its whole episode. Um, because relationships have become the hardest thing, and like, there's the grief of like not having the baby you're dreaming and praying for, and then there's the way that it's just unfair to you and the people around you. It's like,
Hmm.
I, part of me wants to say, like, I literally don't know which is worse.
Wow.
um and I remember making like a reel on social media about it one day, because I was just like, it's just not even fair to the people in your life, like the circle of people that support you. It's not fair to them. And I wanted to kind of honor like the people who it's been unfair to. Like, I've hurt people, I have isolated from people, I low key have like cut people off that I couldn't do it anymore. And they did literally nothing wrong, but
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. And that's really painful. And I'm like, I literally see myself hurting them, and I can't make a different decision. Like, this is
Yeah.
literally what I have to do to stay afloat. Um, and I just want to say, like, it's not fair to them either. It's a
Yeah.
very, very painful part of everyone involved in this journey. Um, one of the things, infertility robs so much of your life. It robs a lot of joy and a lot of connection with people in your life. I have had, I like low key have to disassociate talking about this part, but um, I haven't been able to invest and connect to the kids and babies that my best friends have had because of where I'm at. And I feel like infertility has robbed me of being like that aunt role that like I've dreamed
Hmm.
of, like to my best friends' babies. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't even go there with them. That's robbed from me. Um, Staying friends with someone who has been nothing but unconditional love and support for me. I've been robbed of that continued friendship because they've had 3 babies in the time that I've had none. Um, I've had friends that have been pregnant right when they want to get pregnant, and they no longer hold a can hold a role of support in my life like they used to. It's
Yeah.
not fair to them, and it's not fair to me because I love them with every bone in my body, but there comes a point where the people that you need support from, like that changes. Those people
Yeah.
change. And it doesn't mean anything about who they are. It doesn't take away the the goodness of their heart, the unconditional love that they have for you. It doesn't even take away their desire to be a number one support for you.
Right.
But there is a disconnect that, again, it's just unfair, but it's real. Like, I can't receive support from you anymore like I used to.
Yeah.
And it's really, really painful. Um, it doesn't mean that my friends with kids can't support me. They actually have in really beautiful ways, but they're not the people I'm turning to when I'm having really, really hard days. Like, that looks different through the years. And I guess I just want to normalize that for people. The best possible outcome is to have an honest conversation with those friends. Um, just like having a moment of like gratitude, I guess, because my people have been so understanding and so gracious. And they've loved me even if it's from an arm's length, even if I can't like their baby announcement and comment on their baby pictures. Like, gosh, like I've just had the most beautiful love that's really painful
Yeah.
surround me. Like, you've loved me so beautifully even when you can't relate. Like, you've just been such a space that makes me feel seen, and you listen really, really intently and with a lot of compassion. And I'm just going through the faces of my people
Yeah.
right now, and it's like I don't deserve them. Like, they've been so gracious and so understanding, and even if they're not the people I immediately turn to, like, they're so rock solid there for me.
Hmm.
And they don't question my boundaries. They don't like guilt me or make me feel bad for not being able to be invested in their kids like I want to. Um,
Yeah.
and that's a huge, huge gift. Because at the end of the day, like, the last thing we want on top of our grief is like the grief of guilt,
Hmm.
or the grief of shame. And so I feel like I've been the luckiest person with in those complicated relationships and friendships to still feel just undying support from people that are not in
Yeah.
my shoes. Like, that's kind of crazy. And my heart hurts for people that just don't have that experience, because I think it's really, really common that friendships are burned and bridges are burned. It's just like not fair. It's like no one asked for this. So, yeah, we got a lot to dig into about that topic, but
I know.
I'll stop it there probably.
That could be 10 episodes. I'm so glad that you feel the support from your people. Like I just like loved watching you have that moment of gratitude because you have so many people that just like love you. And just like you said, whether they're like the one you're texting annoyed at the baby announcement or whether they're just like thinking of you and loving you and praying for you, like I really like not even feel like I know you have like an army of people that are just on your side and supporting you who love you so much.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think that's what one of the greatest gifts has been about sharing publicly and sharing openly.
Yeah.
And I would never like push someone to do it that's not in that place.
Right.
It's such a personal, sensitive thing. However, I can confidently say, without a doubt in my mind, like this vulnerability has brought in return the greatest gifts and the greatest strengthen like opportunity for my friendships to strengthen, for total strangers to like speak life and blessing over me. There have been when I'm pregnant, like I have so many stories to tell. I can't wait to like have a whole episode about it because literally just like total strangers and random people have just been like flooding me lately. I can't wait to tell about it. And I know the only way that has been possible has been because I guess I've had open hands to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so maybe someone is maybe like on the fence, like I want to share, I want to open up to some more people. Definitely doesn't have to be on the internet, but sharing in a trusted circle of friends, I think will surprise you. And it does hurt. There's always opportunity for people to say the wrong thing, and that just never goes away. But if you're on the fence and you feel a tug to share more openly with some trusted people, like I would encourage you to do that because it has been one of the greatest parts of this whole journey is just the way I have felt like that these waves of gratitude and support and love over and over and over. You guys, like this is 3.5 years of people like still showing up for me. Like it's a long, long time of being like a sad girl. And sometimes I'm like, I'm tired of being the sad girl. I'm tired of people like viewing me as like the one who can't get pregnant, but like that's not how your people view you. And if that's a fear you have, like just like reject that and let people in to like serve your heart and love where you're at right now. It's just crazy. Like when I think of it, the amount of times people have like listened to the same stuff. I'm saying the same stuff over and over, you know? I have like witnessed the most beautiful like acts of love through this because of the people that have time and time again like met me where I'm at.
Yeah.
And inspired me to enter into hard places with other people over and over and over again. If it lasts a decade, like I want to be that version of a friend to people.
Wow.
Who've done that for me. And it's like that's only been possible because I've let them in, you know?
Sorry, you just froze for a second.
You did too.
But I got you back. Like...
okay.
It's giving Brene Brown. It's
whoa.
like just I just looked up this quote while you were talking, because just you're talking about the power of vulnerability, and that's her whole, all her research, all her TED Talks, everything is done on like connection is, vulnerability is the birthplace of connection, right?
Yeah.
But this quote says vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. And if we want greater clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives, vulnerability is the path. And social media is such a trip, but like you and I
Yeah.
have both experienced beauty, like beauty
Yeah.
in real, actual connection through vulnerability in
Yeah.
our experiences. I mean, one of your best friends in and out of your fertility journey has been Katie, who
Yeah.
you would not have known without Instagram. Like, that
Dude,
is
it's
insane to
wild.
me. It's insane to me. And like, if she hadn't shared pieces of her story, if you hadn't shared pieces of her
Yeah.
story, there literally wouldn't be like the same connection there. And
Mm-hmm.
not saying everybody needs to go share their vulnerable experiences on social
Yeah.
media and that that's the place, but like
Mm-hmm.
even in your real life, I think you're saying too, like opening yourself up, as painful as it is, to acknowledge what you're going through. And this
Mm-hmm.
is within fertility or any other part of your life, like opening up and letting people in, like that's where love and connection and
Yeah.
empathy and joy, that's where all of those things happen.
Yeah.
um and I know you've had like that freaking reel that you had go viral. Oh my god, the
Which
comments
one
on
where I was
that reel.
crying?
The one where you're like at your kitchen island saying like
Yeah.
basically it's annoying that like this like person that eats McDonald's every day and snorts cocaine in the bathroom off the
Yeah.
bathroom floor, sneezes and
Is
gets
pregnant
pregnant,
for the
like
fourth
that
time.
real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I got so much hate.
And it's just like, yeah, you were a real trooper through that one going viral, because those comments were delulu, literally delulu.
And okay, just I want to speak to that because so many people say the wrong things, whether they know you or
Oh
not.
my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah, talk about that.
Internet comments are a whole thing that I literally do not give time and space to. I don't know how, but like I truly just turn those off. Like I see my friends go to war for me in the comment section. It's hilarious. But those really don't affect me. I want to just speak to the ways that like people with really good intention miss the mark. And this
Yeah.
happens for me more often than you would think this far in. But I think one of the questions we got, I want to look, maybe we didn't get this question, but oh yeah.
What kind of
What
support
kind
is
of,
helpful or hurtful
yeah,
versus, yeah, what kind of support is helpful versus hurtful from someone who is not walking through infertility?
yes. Love this question. Um, most people who have not experienced this, well, I don't even want to say most people because you're a great example of someone who hasn't, but like you don't say the wrong things. Um,
Oh, that's good, because
have you worried that you
sometimes
have?
I don't know. I think I never feel like I'm walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
But I just tangenting off that question. I care so much and I don't want to hurt you. And
Yeah.
also I don't feel anxious really or eggshelly, because I know we have the relationship where if
Yeah.
I did hurt you, I think you would be able to tell me,
Yeah.
and I could just learn from it. Um but I'm sure there are just idiots out there who just let things fly
Yeah.
that are like, could you have an ounce of self-awareness to know why this might not be a productive or
Exactly.
helpful comment? And I'm curious to know what
Exactly.
those are that you get the most um, from
Well, I think
people.
that's what that's the beauty of a trusted friend. Like when you have the trust between you to know, like, I actually trust Carissa enough to tell her that she hurt me and know that
Yeah.
she's going to have ears to hear that and receive that. And you having trust with me to be like, I hear you and I'm going to do better. Thank you for like telling me that. Like, that isn't the case with a lot of people. I'm thinking of like extended family members or, you know, people who Jesus juke you all the time and they're like, God's timing. Like, it's not God's time for you yet. It's like, first of all, sit down. Like, God did not send you to tell me when the right time was. And it's one of the worst things that has happened, is just the, the people coming at it from like the Bible in the worst ways. That's very personal to me. But there are people like,
You said Jesus juke.
yes, you've heard that, right?
That's such a no, I love it. It's such a funny little phrase.
People love to Jesus juke someone who's in grief. Like, God
Oh
promises you
yeah.
peace. Like, all these things, you're just like,
Yeah.
shut
Everything happens for a reason. You're like, literally go away.
you're dead to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like one recent one I got is just like, I just don't know, like, why the with the way the world is going, like why people like want to have kids. Like, I just don't get it. And I'm like, okay. Thank
Someone
you.
said this to you in the context of your fertility journey? What the F?
I know. So what's hard is like your brain has to start filtering at lightning speed. Who is this person? What do they mean to me? What is their intention here? What do I know to be true about them? Are they just an idiot in this realm? Yes. And
The
it's
answer is
it's
they're an
just
idiot.
it's like so hard to have to respond with like grace and compassion, but um yeah, it's a really really frustrating thing is people like spitting these comments to try and understand you or try to like relate to you, or I don't know what the purpose is, but I just know like that's a very very common experience that piles on top of your already frustrated place with like
Yeah.
you and your body, like your grief. um so I would say the more time goes on, the stronger, like I've built like more of a callus to it, if that makes sense. But it doesn't get easier or fix anything. It's just like, again, one of those unfair parts of this whole thing. Like it robs you of just like normal conversation with people who mean really well, you know? So,
Right.
so anyways, kind of to answer more of that question, like what's helpful versus hurtful? I think little little phrases, like little feel good phrases.
Yeah.
Again, this is for me and my experience, like they don't often help. What is helpful to me is people who come toward me with empathy and compassion and honestly just enter in, and they tell me this sucks. Like, I hate this for you. I'm so sorry. I wish I could change this for you. Like those type of comments provide more of like a balm on my open wound
Mm.
than these comments that you're trying to like pick someone up, but it's just like, well, that's not true for me right now. And I'm going to talk actually about like my faith a little bit right now, because someone did ask me that question, like, how has it affected your faith? And when people say like God has a plan for you, my belief about God and the way he created the world, this actually wasn't his plan. God
Hmm.
created a perfect world where infertility was far, far from someone's reality. And infertility is not a result of like God's plan. This isn't actually what he wants for like his people. And it's not what he wants for me. And I think God actually grieves with me about this. Um, so if someone is like a believer and you say like this is God's plan, like I actually reject that. Like that's infertility is
Mm.
not what he wants for people. Um and that's not a helpful comment. It doesn't mean that God can't use hard things and create, beautiful things out of the dust. Like he does, and he has for me already. And those are very, very apparent, especially in the last like month or so. But when you come at people with those feel good comments, it just doesn't resonate because it's not really true. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, of course I know I'm going to have a baby in the right time. But when people are years into this, that doesn't do anything for them. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't solve any of their pain. It actually is frustrating and makes you question and doubt and go down this whole like emotional spiral that's really unproductive for us. Like we're trying to come out of those spirals all the time.
Yeah.
So just to meet someone where they're at with their grief, and like I think infertility has probably taught me, and I think maybe some people around me, how to be more comfortable with grief that doesn't have a quick solution.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to support someone, I would say try to get comfortable with uncomfortable places.
Yeah.
Grief is uncomfortable because there is no feel good. Like when someone passes away, nothing feels good about that. You just have to sit with them and be present with them and offer your presence. And sometimes your practical things like making a meal or watching their kids or something. But that's a little bit how this is. Like meet someone in the grief, and that's going to do so much more for them to make them feel less alone
Yeah.
than sending a Bible verse that's like,
Oh my
okay,
gosh.
thanks. You know what I mean? Like,
No,
and there
totally.
are times and places like certain verses or like a worship song truly is like what I need to hear, but it doesn't often come from someone else who's just trying to like cheer me up. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. It's probably someone like who deeply intimately knows you and knows where you're at and is like actually really thinking of you and knows you're in a place
Yeah.
to receive it or that you'll feel
Yes.
like really
Yes.
served by it, as opposed to like a one-off stranger being like, God is within you, you will not fail. And you're like, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Exactly. So I hope that helps answer that because gosh, I mean, 1 in 4 couples at this point are struggling with infertility. So it's probably really rare that you don't know someone in the
Yeah.
trenches, which is why we want to go deeper into like how do you support friends and family in this place. Um, and yeah, that's the tip of the iceberg. But I thought that was a really great question, and I am happy to talk a little bit more about how it's affected my faith. Um,
I mean, I
I
have a question. It might be a tearjerker, but I'm going to
okay, you
ask
can.
you.
We're past the tears.
What are the truths that you have found, like God has given you over these last 3 years, that you are able to return
Mm,
to and rest in?
mm. I think one of the things is like he has supplied my every need, like with people, um, the community. Like there's just no denying the gifts that God has given me in supplying support through people, through people's tenderness and their care and their willingness to enter in. Um, that's a really big one for me. I'm trying to think of other like top of the list ones. I have really like I've really had my faith stretched so much that I was telling a friend this morning that like we met for coffee, and I was like, what's been true for me is my faith has been so shaped and refined through this struggle. Whereas like the previous 27 years of my life, I wasn't really even given that opportunity because these types of battles like just they make you press in or pull away. And a lot of times I have chosen to press in, but I've learned things like to answer one of the questions you just asked, what have I learned? Honestly, like God's not afraid of my hard questions. He's not afraid of my grief. He's not afraid of my anger. And I think my second and third year in this, like I've really, really started to lean into that and be like, okay, if like God brought me here, he can handle that I'm absolutely pissed that this is my reality. And I have learned to be so brutally honest and raw in my faith. Not putting like feel good bandages on it, but to like strip it down to the most raw places and be like, I'm going to give God a piece of my mind. And that's actually really been freeing for me because I don't think I've ever done that before. Like I've never had seasons where I've had to be like so honest and like I'm not like afraid to say what I'm thinking. I'm not afraid to like swear about it and just be like he can handle all of that. And that's what I've needed so often, is to feel like he's receiving that from me and he's actually meeting me in that place and he's actually grieving with me in that place because this wasn't his plan. So
I like to think that God is swearing with you.
Yeah, he's like, I agree, dude. Like he's
literally right there with you.
This is not it.
Yeah.
This is not my ideal like version of creation, you know? So,
and that's so different than the toxic positivity. Okay, that's like, I think the difference in the support too is like someone giving you a Bible verse that like knows where you are at, like thought of you, maybe like felt like divinely called to send it to you, versus somebody trying to use something that's divine to like slap a band-aid on your feelings or to make you more comfortable so that they can actually be more comfortable. Like I think that's another thing people don't realize they're doing is like, I need to make this person feel better because I actually cannot handle their grief or their pain or this place. And I do think a lot of people like help from that point or even to like make themselves feel better. Like I did my good deed of the day, honestly, especially when it's like from a stranger on the internet.
Yeah.
But like that's the difference is like, is the vibe behind it, is the energy behind it like toxic positivity or just like being with you in it. And there's such a big difference between, I think there have been so many times where like you are talking to me about where you're at with it or you're crying or you're in it and I don't have anything to say. And that's okay. Like that's okay. You didn't call me for me to have magical things to say to make you feel better because they don't exist.
Right.
And so like the more that people can just honestly expand their own window of tolerance for grief and uncomfortability and pain so that you can actually sit there with somebody like you're saying, like that's powerful. Empathy is I'm going to sit here with you. I'm not going to try and pull you out of it. I'm actually like going to come enter into it with you. And that is like true support right there. And that's not something a Bible verse or a worship song is that doesn't like isn't gonna like trump that usually, like, you know. And I think what you're saying is like you've found that God does that for you. He comes with you and he's not afraid of your pain and he's not like, Ashtyn, just trust me, it's all gonna be fine, like stop feeling sad. It's like they're with you, in it with you, crying with you, angry with you, pissed with you.
Yeah, you put it
And
perfectly.
that is such a probably expansion for you of your view of God and your relationship with
Mm-hmm.
God, because you're in this like season that feels long, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
this like one-off hard thing you're having to deal with.
Right.
It's like a conflict with a friend or an issue you're working through with family. It's like, no, this has been years of your life that you've had to like practice your faith within this like
Mm-hmm.
long-term kind of like grief situation where you're actually able to see like more of God and more of your
Yeah.
relationship with God and his love for you and his ability to sit there in it with you.
Yeah, exactly. And the the places in my heart that aren't like hardened are the places I feel like he's let other people in to show me, like those
Mm,
places of support. And one of the one of the pieces of advice I guess I would give to someone, whether it's spiritually or emotionally, is like fight hard to keep your heart soft.
hmm.
And that's a tall order for a lot of
Yeah.
people. But like you won't regret staying soft. And I think it keeps you available to see with a better perspective. You see things in better light. And I guess I've been able to move through like grief cycles faster, not because
Hmm.
I'm rushing, but I just feel like I can like bounce back a little bit more and appreciate like moments of love and compassion from people because I'm less like hardened, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And that takes a lot of work. So I'm not trying to like throw it out like here's an easy solution, but I do ask God to like keep my heart soft. And
Yeah.
I think that's played out really positively for me.
Yeah. Not to bring up another Brene Brown quote, but I'm on this page of her quotes finding the other one, and it's like, wait, where did it go? Um she talks a lot about like the dark not destroying the light, and
Hmm.
like that we can't selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful ones, we also numb the positive ones. Like that's a quote. And like your
That's so good.
I do think that is something that I've gotten to watch you do so well. Like
Hmm.
you have like kept your hands open, and I even want to like turn that back on you where you're saying you're so grateful for the support you have. Like the reason that you are able to like feel that support from your community is because you have worked so hard to keep your heart soft and
Hmm.
open to receiving that support. And I do think it's like such a huge testament to your openness, your ability to receive. And you've navigated so many hard situations with your fertility, but then with your relationships and with your
Yeah.
friendships. Like you have had to navigate so many tricky situations, and you've done it so gracefully while also staying true to what your emotions are and not shoving them or shaming them or
Hmm.
othering them, and being like, no, I'm pissed. And
Yeah.
like, it's not this like either or like
Right.
your anger shuts people out. Like you've worked so hard to keep those just like love lines in your life open with
Hmm.
people.
Yeah.
And it's why you're able to feel that support. So, yeah, I just think you've done that really,
That's really nice of you to
really
say.
gracefully. Yeah. And you don't think like anger is graceful. Like we don't think of it like that. But
Hmm.
I do think you have had such a poise about you. And like, I think, I guess just this confidence and trust even in the anger and the pissed off and the like cursing. Like
Yeah.
it's it's never been like you've shut out the light when you're in the
Hmm.
dark spot, you know?
Hmm.
So it's been really,
That's a really nice observation, honestly. Like,
I mean, it's not
for
like,
you to make.
yeah, I mean, I'm not, obviously, it's not like I'm happy you're in this situation, but like it, it has been beautiful to watch you navigate it and just like witnessing who you are through it. And I think you're really cool.
I love you.
I love you.
We've recorded like over an hour, and so I don't know what to do now.
Say goodbye. Well, this is like, I just think, first of all, thank you. Like, thank you for sharing everything you just shared. And like, what we've been saying is the vulnerability that you just brought to this episode is gonna allow for connection. And like, I'm excited to see what comes of that. And maybe we won't even see it, but I know that this episode is gonna like touch so many people,
Yeah.
and make people feel seen and like relate to you and feel hope. And like, I, again, just to bring it full circle to what we were talking about in the beginning, like, you get to give to this community when you're in these like higher places of peace and steadiness. Like, you get to give to this community that's given you a lot with connection too.
Yeah.
And this is the beginning of these conversations. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it'll be the next episode. It might be. We're figuring out planning and stuff, but Katie will be on soon to talk about friendship, navigating friendship and fertility. So stay tuned for that coming soon.
Yeah. I feel bad we like didn't get to all the questions, but
we will. I'm confident we will in like upcoming episodes.
We can bring those up even with Katie, because she's just chock full of wisdom. And you think if you think that I have handled any of this gracefully, like, no. Like, I look at Katie more and I'm like, she has handled this so gracefully and so beautifully, and she's even like a year further in than I am. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear from her, and just a podcast with like two of my best friends instead of one. It's gonna be so fun.
I know. All right. Thank you, Ash. I love you.
Love you too. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. We love you guys. Bye.